Up until this past week, my backyard has been like a swamp with all the rain that we had. Multiple times I tried to drain water from the area in my backyard to help speed along the drying process so that my kids could play back there and so that I could mow the jungle that was growing back there. It looked like a wildlife habitat with the grass like up this high. To drain the water, though, I have come to use a siphon method with a hose. It was the one cheapest way I could get water to move from one direction to another without buying some kind of pump. And so the way of course, like we all do, we go to YouTube and figure out how to do these things, right? And so the one video I watched said, like, fill a hose up with water and then set that where your water is and the other end lower than, where you started. And as the water starts to drain out of the hose that you filled up, it'll start pulling the other water with it. If I were just to set the hose out there, it wasn't going to do anything. I had the right instrument, but it wasn't filled with the right thing to be able to do the job that it needed to do. And the same is true of how the Apostle Paul describes our ability to live out God's will, including submitting to one another. Throughout Ephesians 5, verses 15 and following, the Apostle Paul describes the wisdom of living according to God's will. He also describes that we live apart from God's will if we are not filled with God's Spirit. You can see that in verse 18 of chapter 5. But we are unable to live into God's will when we are filled with God's Spirit. All of us are created to be able to live out God's will, but if we are not filled with His Spirit, we are just an instrument that isn't capable of doing anything. Just like my hose is a capable instrument of being a siphon, but if it's not primed or filled with the right thing, it's not going to be able to do what it's made to do. God's Spirit empowers us to be able to live into God's will.